The Right to Choose by Elizabeth Mount. To begin, to start, to create, to undertake, to grow, to promise, to increase, to generate. All these are our birthright. As we are created, so may we create. The ability and the choice to create is sacred. To withdraw that chance from any person without their permission would be a violent act, the cutting off of life itself. And yet, as precious is the right to simply not, to end, to terminate, to stop, to discontinue, to rest, to hibernate, to impede, to prevent. These too are our birthright. For without consent, our ability to create becomes not a blessing, but a burden and an imposition. Without space for a no, there can be no trustworthy yes. Today, we come to this holy place and time, ready to invoke the divine, to make space for the sacred, to co-create community once again. This too is a choice. You cannot, you may not be coerced into relationship with the holy or with one another. I invite you. I ask you to join us. I respect it if you will not, today or ever. More sacred than any other individual need is choice. The right to know oneself. The right to know what you are ready for, what you need. To stretch when you can, to pause when you will, to know your body, your mind, your spirit better than anyone else, and ultimately, to be trusted with the responsibility of your own living.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Berkeley. My name is Andrea Brown, and I am going to be your lead worship associate here today. I say lead because today's service is a little different. Soon, the Supreme Court is going to release their official decision that will either curtail or, more likely, overturn Roe versus Wade, which was the case that that made the way for the right to make personal decisions regarding one's own body. In anticipation of this, 5 of us, of worship associates, came together for this service. And I will also add, we have a very, very brand new, very welcome new director of family ministry and lifelong learning, Heaven Walker, who will be joining us today. I'm very, very excited. Okay, but anticipation of what we think is going to be coming either next week or the week after or sometime before the end of this month, we each wrote or chose a reading based on what spoke to us about this issue. Because there are so many who want to participate, we all crammed ourselves into 500 words. I know we could go on and on. Our hope is that this varied patina of voices can hold some of the many needs our community faces in this time. We do this because we are a welcoming community. We are always working on how to better welcome and care for one another. If this is your first time here, I am so glad that you have come. And whoever you are, we welcome you in the fullness of who you are. As we begin, I would like to acknowledge that this church occupies land in Huichin, the unceded territory of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people. We understand that we continue to benefit from the seizure and occupation of this land. We, UUCB, acknowledge and embrace our responsibility to take restorative action. We affirm that this is our deeply felt commitment and promise our congregation to be in right relationship with Indigenous communities, aligning in solidarity, supporting Indigenous projects, and caring properly for the land. Now, let us kindle our flame either on the chalice or in our hearts with these words by Melanie Davis. While Jason Russell lights this flame, if there was ever a time for a candle in the darkness, this would be it. Using a spark of hope, kindle the flame of love, ignite the light of peace, and feed the flame of justice. We also pause to remind ourselves of some of the foundations of living deeply and well with each other. So Jason will light our candle of courage, while Karen Elliott lights a candle for the acts of service, and Dawn Close lights a candle of fellowship, and Sandy Portillo Robbins lights our candle of hope. May we find and cultivate these foundations of flourishing in ourselves and in each other. Now, please join in singing our opening song, We Are a Gentle, Angry People. Holly Neer updated the lyrics. She said, originally we sang We Are Gay and Lesbian Together, but now we're learning so much more about gender and sexuality, and it requires so many more syllables than I can fit in this song. So now let us sing We Are All in This Together. The words will be updated on the screen.
Please join me in saying our covenant. Love guides this church. The quest for truth and justice is its common purpose. To give thanks, listen deeply, speak with care, honor our differences, and seek and grant forgiveness. These things we covenant with one another.
If you are young of body, young in spirit, I welcome you to join me on the stage as we do our all ages part of the service. So today I'm going to share with you a story called The Sun Mother, and it is an Aboriginal tale from Australia. And we have something coming up soon, the summer solstice, So we will be celebrating the sun in all of its fullness. So I thought we would read a story about the sun, and maybe, if we have time, talk a little bit about the blessings that the sun gives us, and especially will be giving us so much as the solstice approaches. The Sun Mother. In the long ago, in the time before time, there was darkness, there was silence, the earth was asleep. Under the surface of the land, all the forms of life lay sleeping. Up in the sky, the Sun Mother was also asleep. Until one day, she heard the Great Spirit whisper, "Wake up, my child." The Sun Mother inhaled deeply, and the still air vibrated. She opened her eyes, and light washed over the world. The Great Spirit spoke again. "It is time for you to wake the earth." The Sun Mother smiled as sunbeams smile, and the earth was warmed. Swift as a shooting star, she flew down to the empty earth. The ground was cold and hard beneath her feet. Very gently, she took a step, and as her bare foot touched the bare soil, she felt a wonderful sensation and wiggled her toes. She lifted her foot, and the first green shoots of grass on the planet were revealed. With each step she took, fresh green grass sprang up in her footprints. The Sun Mother walked east, west, north, and south, traveling every step of the earth. Grass rippled in her tracks until the land was alive with green. Leaves uncurled, smooth leaves, sticky leaves, silky leaves, and prickly leaves, woolly leaves and waxy leaves, round leaves, pointed leaves, hand-shaped leaves, and heart-shaped leaves, speckled, freckled, and dappled leaves, an amazing array of leaves. Buds unfurled, flowers bloomed in purple, yellow, white, and red, and a million colors in between. They smelled divine. Saplings sank down their roots and stretched up their branches and grew, and roots and fruits, nuts and shoots swelled and ripened, an abundance of good things to eat. The Sun Mother sat down among the soft-petaled flowers, breathed deeply the cool blue scent of eucalyptus trees, and rested from her labors. Then once again, she heard the voice of the Great Spirit. "Daughter, it is time for you to go into the caverns of the earth and wake up the sleeping animal spirits." The Sun Mother set out into the dark, cold regions of the world. As she entered the first cave, her bright light woke up the sleeping spirits, and she heard a great buzzing and humming. Caterpillars, grubs, and beetles, worms, ants, and bees wiggled and crawled and swarmed out of the cave. When the Sun Mother walked out into the world again, she was leading a kaleidoscope of butterflies behind her. The insects flitted and fluttered from bush to bush, and the world was a dance of shimmering color. Again, the Sun Mother rested. She looked down from the mountaintops at the splendor of the earth and beamed with delight, refreshed. The Sun Mother walked down, down, down into the next cave. She stepped down onto solid ice. With the touch of her foot, the ice began to melt and squeeze between her toes. Beneath her feet, a stream started to flow, splashing around her ankles. Her warmth woke up lizards, frogs, and snakes. A river gurgled out of the cavern, filling up lakes and lagoons, creeks and billabongs, and the deep, wide sea. The Sun Mother walked out into the world once again, trailing her fingertips through the rippling waters. All around her swam seahorses and turtles and fish of every size and every shade, from pearly silver to coral red. Again, the Sun Mother rested, for she was filled to the brim with the wonder of the world. When the Sun Mother went into the coldest, darkest cave, in the deepest loins of the earth, she was accompanied by a procession of crawling creatures, some wriggling their way on hundreds of legs, and others slithering on no legs at all. She looked down into the depths of the cavern, and her face shone with love. All along the edges were the spirit forms of birds and animals. Her presence woke up the feathered tribes and the furry clans. With a flutter and clatter of wings, birds of every call and cry burst out of the cave and into existence. Parrots whistled, emus waddled, and the treetops rang with the laughter of kookaburras. Then out came the animals, an infinite variety, a jubilant hubbub. All the creatures gathered around the Sun Mother, glad to be alive. The Sun Mother spoke softly to the multitude of beings assembled around her. Listen, my children, like seeds in the winter, you've slept in the earth. Like seeds in the spring, I have woken you. The earth is alive. The earth is beautiful and radiant. Thank you. So this story is about the Sun Mother waking up the earth. And I feel like when the solstice happens and the sun gets so large and so big and so strong, we sort of wake up too. So I wondered if anyone had any ideas of gifts that we are given from the sun. How are we blessed by the sun?
Warmth.
Warmth.
Watermelon.
Yes, I think I have one waiting in my fridge, actually. Yes. Yes. Rainbows. Yes. Which would also mean rain, right? That would be wonderful. Well, I hope that we have a wonderful solstice summer season that's approaching. May we all be blessed by the sun. May we all bless each other.
Good morning. I'm Karen Elliott. I invite you today to enter our time of quiet with some gentle movement to refresh us and bring us into our bodies a little. Let's begin. We'll stay seated. Let's begin by moving our shoulders in a gentle circle. Up, back, down, and return. Up, back, down, and return. Only as much as feels comfortable. We're not trying to stretch our limits here. Up, back, down, and return. And now reverse. So front, down, back, and up. Front, down, back, and up. And now bring your shoulders gently up toward your ears as much as feels comfortable. Hold a moment and gently let them down. Yeah, I heard that. And again, raise your shoulders up toward your ears as much as feels comfortable. Hold a moment and gently let them down. Nod your head a little bit, just gently right there. Now, let's lift our heads comfortably up toward the ceiling as much as feels good. And then tilt your head down toward your chest as much as feels good. Now, then gently raise your chin again, looking up toward the ceiling as much as feels good. And then now slowly bow your head down all the way that feels comfortable, feeling the length of the back of your neck, all those cervical vertebrae. And when you've done that, return to straight ahead. Gently now tilt your head to the right. Don't go farther than feels good. And back. And tilt your head to the left. And back. In the choir, sometimes we put the opposite hand on our head when we tilt to the right, just for a little bit extra weight, but you don't need to do that because we're not trying to be yogis. And up again, and tilt to the left, and if you want, you can put your left hand and return. So this way now let's gently make circles, shall we? With our head, not big circles. We don't want to come out of here with a crick in our neck. And then reverse and go the other way. Just waking up all those little ligaments, all those little capillaries. And now, I saw someone do this earlier. I don't mean to be hurrying you. Let's gently raise our arms toward the ceiling as much as feels good. You can, if it feels good, you can stretch a little and feel your rib cage open a little and breathe. Take a breath in while you're reaching toward the ceiling, and then release your breath and lower your arms gently. Did that feel good? Do you want to do it again? No? Okay, no. Good. And then reach forward, not too far, just reach forward and wiggle your fingers. We don't wiggle our fingers very much in our culture. We really don't. And now turn your palms up and hands over. And up and over. And draw your hands back in, and if you want, make chicken wings. And you might feel your shoulder blades drawing together and kind of opening through your chest, right? As you make those chicken wings, you can feel the open expanse in your chest. That can feel really good. And bring your arms back to your lap. And now move your feet a little. You might want to walk in place, lifting your heels up the way a cat needs a blanket, or maybe both heels at once, as though you're on your toes, or maybe you want to stretch your legs a little bit. Anything to kind of just remind yourself about your legs and your feet, the lower half of your body. Okay. And finally, let's just breathe together sitting there. Let's breathe in and out. And after a few moments, a few breaths of breathing together, as we sit in our wonderful bodies that have brought each of us all the way to here in our lives, I'll read today's meditation by the Reverend Greta Jo Sadel. You are loved. But first, let's just breathe a few breaths in silence together. It begins. Everyone loves someone who had an abortion. If you had an abortion, you are loved. If you've never told a soul, or if you share your story regularly, you are loved. If you are confident in your decision, or wonder if it was the right choice, you are loved. If you are a queer, non-binary, trans, two-spirit, or cis woman, you are loved. If you are child-free by choice, or want to have kids eventually, you are loved. If your choice was driven by medical viability or your own emotional health, you are loved. If you found a provider to care for you or had to rely on yourself, you are loved. If you were always pro-choice, or if your choice conflicts with your beliefs, you are loved. If you love your body or are still angry with your body, you are loved. If you believe God loves you, or you believe in nothing divine at all, you are loved. If you find yourself reflected here, or your truth is more than words an ink post can, you are loved.
A reading by Jeffrey Dateson. The Pregnancy. The year was 1970. She was barely 18. She just learned she was pregnant. But what did that mean? She couldn't tell her mother, and certainly not her dad. Her life would be in ruins if the baby she had. She went out on her own. She'd be out on her own, trying to keep the kid alive. How could she afford childcare without a 9-to-5? Together they would starve to death or be riddled with strife. We don't care, said the doctors. This state is pro-life. So she kept her little secret to keep a roof over her head, for she still lived at home in her childhood bed. They'd tell her she'd been foolish to send her boyfriend off like that. They'd tell her this was God's manner to make her pay, to struggle out on the street, alone as a mom, with the baby's father far off dying in a war in Vietnam. So she and the baby would starve to death or be riddled with strife. We don't care, said the doctors. This state is pro-life. She asked her friends for their advice. They didn't know what to do. They told her to keep her hopes up, and her hopes would see her through. Then one friend shared a secret, with a whisper, not a shout, that she knew a technique with a hanger straightened out. But she didn't want to go that route. The risk seemed too severe. She'd heard a neighbor died that way earlier in the year. So instead, she would starve to death or be riddled with strife. We don't care, said the doctors. This state is pro-life. As her body started growing, and she feared soon came to pass, her parents learned what happened and threw her out on her ass. She couldn't get a job, not in her condition, so she struggled just to meet the basic nutrition. Complications soon arose. The hospital finally let her in. Even still, they wouldn't allow an illegal abortion. In the end, she didn't starve to death. In the end, it wasn't strife. It was the pregnancy that killed her in a state that was pro-life.
Good morning. This topic of reproductive justice has been very difficult for me. I had to first understand what it meant by the phrase reproductive justice, and then I had to understand what relationship I had with it, and finally, how could I share a personal reflection with my congregation in such a way that my own experiences might bring something of value to a thoughtful community of sensitive and engaged seekers. When looking for the definition of reproductive justice, I found nothing that referenced the man's role in that discussion. It was, rightfully so, addressing marginalized women primarily. Well, I'm not a marginalized woman. So what does reproductive justice mean for me, or is it not an issue for men at all? I tried to draw on my own personal experience with sex, reproduction, and abortion. And the feedback I received from people I care about and trust discouraged me from using my personal journey as a framework in this reflection. In one case, it was expressed to me that this was not the right context to share some of the more personal and painful experiences that I had in the earliest years of my sexual life. And by another friend, my thoughts on the parental rights of men was completely dismissed. And I'd like to share with you that feedback. It's the UU Church, Jason, very politically current. Many states in the South have passed and are trying to pass laws that make all birth control illegal altogether, to jail doctors who perform abortions, to legally encode that life begins at conception, to bring back on the down low sterilization of black and brown female prisoners. And the biggest of all, SCOTUS's intention with Roe versus Wade, with a leaked draft opinion showing that the majority will overturn Roe versus Wade when the state's AGs bring the cases to the Supreme Court. What the UU is entrusting you with, my friend told me, is that they are looking for a man to stand up for women's abortion rights, rights to use the pill and other birth control, to stop the efforts to strip Planned Parenthood's funding because they provide medical things not involving pregnancy at all. My friend asked me to ask the person who assigned this topic to me if what she is describing is a subject that they expected, or is it men not having parental rights? So I failed in my intention to bring a new perspective to the concept of reproductive justice, and I'll leave it at that. So on this occasion, I will pass on reflecting on the pro-choice versus pro-life debate. I will talk about being pro-living. I believe in every person's right to make difficult decisions and to live with those consequences. I believe in a child's right to be loved by both their mother and their father, whatever genders they may be. I believe in the right of a child not to be murdered in school. I believe in a girl's right not to have to sell her body to put food on her table or a roof over her head. This can become a theme for me. I'm sorry. And for my brothers, I believe it is your right to give a loving home to a child who has no parents through adoption. I believe it is your right to mentor children who have difficult situations in the overrun foster care system. I believe it is your right to seek and attain gainful employment, to support yourself, to support your wife, to support your husband, and to support your children. I believe it is your right to pursue your dreams, but not to put those dreams ahead of the dreams of your children. In short, my brothers, I believe it is your right to man up, and if you choose not to man up, then shut up. Thank you.
When I was a girl, abortion was illegal. A talented soprano in our high school, always the lead role in musicals, disappeared her junior year, whisked away from our view. I learned later the girl's mother was ostracized for years by some women in our liberal church for having a daughter who became pregnant out of wedlock. In my early 20s, the pill became available. Freedom from fear of pregnancy. What a gift as I explored my sexuality. Eventually, I switched to the diaphragm. The pill's hormones bothered me. One night, my boyfriend and I were careless, didn't use it. Our talks about my resulting pregnancy revealed how unstable our relationship actually was, and a lack of trust that alarmed me. Thankfully, abortions were now legal. With relief, I terminated my pregnancy. Despite that rough beginning, a few years later, we married. And within months, I felt the call of motherhood. I was surprised. Now a performing dancer and dance teacher, building my career. But it was unmistakable. So we went on a second honeymoon, and voila. That first trimester, I experienced a great undoing. Pregnant women, I think, are utterly, utterly changed. Our bodies are undone in preparation for what will be constructed within. And we're helpless before it. We have lost control. My ligaments loosened, blood volume surged, my head pounded, dizziness, swelling, GI woes, mood swings, nausea. We can be very, very sick, even bedridden. We do not quite recognize ourselves. Nevertheless, when we want a child, pregnant women will endure almost anything to keep our pregnancy going. Those 9 months are a biologically provided practice period in reducing self-centeredness. Right? Unselfing us, prepping us for the next 18 plus years. For we are now responsible for growing another life inside us to the point of viability and beyond. This is a sacred responsibility to provide conditions to make life possible while not yet being in control. A baby is made little by little out of materials reaching the fetus through the mother's body from elements she swallows and breathes. It is a miracle how that happens, that it happens. And it doesn't always work. Although that pregnancy resulted in a beautiful, healthy baby. Later, I had a heartbreaking miscarriage at 14 weeks. Every pregnancy is coupled to that risk, too. Women risk death when we're pregnant. We carry life and death when we're pregnant. We risk terrible loss and take on great lifetime challenge. Carrying a pregnancy and bearing a child is a grace that we need to be fully ready for. It's our sacred responsibility to make as wise a pregnancy choice as we can based on our deepest values and self-understanding. Our responsibility and our choice. I'm sickened that a group of extremist justices, put in place primarily through shameful political maneuvering, representing a theocratic minority demographic, could determine that we women are not free to make our own lifetime decisions about timing motherhood, raising children, and maintaining our own body's integrity. Thank you.
An abridged reading of Love, Morality, and Reproductive Justice by Reverend Darcy Baxter. One of our struggles as UUs is how to answer that question. So what do Unitarian Universalists believe? A common response is, Unitarian Universalists can believe whatever they want. Many of us UUs have come to think of ourselves as anything and everything, instead of something very particular. But working on a national abortion hotline after college, I learned how specific and particular my Unitarian Universalism was. Melissa called from a Midwestern state. She had little money, and the closest place to get an abortion was over 500 miles away. Her situation is not unusual. Unless you live close to a metropolitan area, you're looking at a journey like Melissa was. That's when I found myself telling her to go to church. "This is going to sound crazy to you," I said to Melissa, "but I'm not kidding. There is a UU church about 100 miles from you. Call there, tell them this abortion hotline counselor you spoke to was Unitarian and told you to call. This church is not like a lot of other churches. It is part of our tradition that we support women accessing abortion services. Maybe there is a doctor there, or maybe someone in the congregation knows somebody. It's the only other thing I can think of right now." I didn't think twice about referring Melissa to her closest UU congregation. With so much stigma and shame attached to women's pregnancy decisions, I could not have just sent Melissa to an anything and everything kind of church. I have asked myself since, why did I feel it was safe to refer Melissa to a UU congregation? I could cite to you the 10 resolutions our congregational delegates have passed in support of a women's access to abortion care at UU General Assemblies. I could tell you about the history of women suffragists in our congregations. I could tell you how Roe versus Wade itself was forged in the chapel of the First Unitarian Church in Dallas, Texas. But I did not have those facts that day. What I had was my experience going through our comprehensive sexuality education program. I trust UUs with women's well-being because when my friends were going to church for religion classes, I was going to church to learn about sexuality, power, protection, and yes, to learn about abortion as an option for dealing with an unintended or complicated pregnancy. What I did have was my father's upbringing in a Unitarian church that provided the local Planned Parenthood with their first home. What I had was being raised in a congregation where my minister was one of the many UU clergy who was part of the Clergy Consultation Service, a network of clergy who referred women to illegal but safe abortion providers in the days before Roe versus Wade. What I had then and have now is the lived, embodied experience of growing up in UU communities. Growing up UU did not just teach me anything and everything, it taught me something. It taught me to be someone very particular.
In 1994, 12 Black women, including Reverend Alma Crawford, who's part of UU Circles, gathered to craft a new justice framework. The right to have an abortion, you see, had a problem. The right worked well for people who were, well, mostly those who were able-bodied, somewhat well-off, white women whose main problem was the lack of access to abortion health care. But this narrow right, focusing on the lack, ignored the history of power, taking away people's ability to get pregnant or through theft or oppression, taking away their living children. These Black women invented the term reproductive justice. The sister song, Women of Color Reproductive Justice Collective, defines reproductive justice as the human right to bodily autonomy, to have children, to not have children, and to parent the children we have in safe and sustainable communities. Like Sandy read in our opening words, the choice isn't just about the ability to say no. It's also about the ability to say yes. That sacred right to create. Black people, Indigenous people, people of color, trans people, disabled people, and many, many others have been fighting for reproductive justice long before this term existed. Indigenous parents fought when their children were taken to residential schools and now continue to fight as children are adopted out to white families. Black parents fought when their children were stolen from their arms in chattel slavery and now continue to fight the foster care and incarceration system. Queer people fought when their right to have children was denied, and now as Texas and other states try to take children from parents who support their trans or gender non-binary identities, they continue to fight. Disabled people, poor people, Black, Indigenous, people of color continue the fight that happens when the state wants to sterilize people and continues to try with immigrant people at the border. The fight continues in Ukraine, where so many children are separated from their parents. As we wait for the Supreme Court decision, I want us to know that what we are facing is not new. Whether it's a 15-week or a 6-week ban on abortion, the loss of health care and the loss of bodily autonomy that dawn and the consequences of these losses hurts, because we know what those consequences look like, as Dawn shared with us, and because so many of us hoped that this fight was over. But we never repaired the rot of white supremacy patriarchy that created all of this. So here we are again. Ours is a faith of commitments and deep connections with each other and our souls. Connections to our principles and to justice. Whether you believe, as evangelical Christians started promoting in the 1970s, that life begins at conception, or if you believe that the embryo is mere water for the first 40 days, or you believe that the soul enters the fetus at 120 days, or you believe that a person owes their body to no one, or that it is a mitzvah to terminate if the pregnant person's life or health is at stake, or you believe, as I do, that life begins with breath. Whatever constellation of beliefs you have, this is not about those beliefs. We are all in this fight. Reproductive justice is something UUs have been building for a long time. We build it when we offer childcare so parents can participate in our community. Our very own Marcia Sexton advocated against terminating disabled fetuses. Jason spoke about the need to care and stand up for children. We, as Sandy read, we support pregnant people through their abortions. We support making schools safe from shooters and stopping trans kids being taken away from their supportive parents. So many of us work to repair the rot of white supremacy patriarchy in so many different ways. We have our Widening the Circle, honoring Indigenous Peoples Group, our literature, film, drama, and music contingent, our Social Justice Council, our WOWs, I'm sorry if I forgot the updated name, or our Youth Spirit Artworks, and so many others. I have faith in our community. We're not perfect, and honestly, that's another day while I explain why perfection is bad. But we're here, and we're connected to each other, connected to this fight, to this world, as heaven shared, to this living earth. Our connections, our stories, our actions are how we do this work, how we are in this fight. May it be so, and amen.
At this point in our service, we invite you to make an offering. With our offering, each of us has the opportunity to recommit to making UUCB a strong and vibrant community. For now, we're conducting the offering in the sanctuary without passing the plate. Instead, you can give either electronically, or you can take a donation envelope from the back of the pew in front of you and place a donation in the box beside the fountain in the atrium. Please indicate whether your donation is for pledge or plate. Each week, half of our plate offerings are shared with a Good Neighbor organization recommended by our Social Justice Council. This is an essential part of our church's effort to contribute to social justice projects in the wider community that benefit from our financial support. We hope you will continue to practice generosity with them. This month, our good neighbor is the East Bay Sanctuary Covenant. The EBSC provides accessible legal and social services to support low-income immigrants and asylum seekers fleeing violence and persecution. They practice radical inclusion and focus on historically marginalized communities, including Indigenous peoples, LGBTQ people, unaccompanied minors, and survivors of gender-based violence. Offerings of any value are received with gratitude. Thank you. Please join me in dedicating our offering. We dedicate our offering and ourselves to the mission of this congregation, to create loving community, inspire spiritual growth, and encourage lives of integrity, joy, and service.
Well, it's been a privilege for all of us WAs to be here with you today, both in person and virtually. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to remind you about our website, uucb.org, where you can find links to many church resources, including the week ahead, our weekly newsletter, which includes a list of activities, announcements, and contact information. And here are a few things that I think deserve some attention. The second annual UUCB Youth Reunion will take place this coming Saturday, June 18th at 7 p.m. All current and former UUCB youth group members are invited to attend. You'll see old friends, make new ones, check out our new multi-game table, and enjoy the outdoor movie after sunset. And of course, friends are welcome. Please email Melissa Rosales to RSVP. Next, twice a month throughout the summer, you will have an opportunity to visit our Freestone Retreat as part of our ongoing process to determine the future of the property. Saturday, June 21st, will be your next opportunity, so please contact David Wemmer for more information, including carpooling. There he is, right over there. Then, save Sunday, June 26th from 2:30 to 4 for an all-church potluck picnic at Live Oak Park. We'll celebrate summer with UUCB friends, meet new people, bring a snack or beverage to share. Stay tuned, and Ann Harlow has those details. And finally, the Sunday morning greeting volunteers really need your help. It's fun and easy. So please contact Lisa Maynard now for that. So please join us in singing our closing song, number 1074, Turn the World Around. The words will be on screen. Thank you.
We come from the fire, living in the fire. Go back to the fire, turn the world around. Go back to the water, living in the water. Go back to the water, turn the world around. We come from the mountains, living on the mountain. Go back to the mountains, turn the world around. Oh, so is life. Oh, so is life. Oh, so is life. Oh, so is life. Oh, who I am, do I know? Who I am, do I wanna know? See, we wanna know it clearly. Do we know who I am? Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? See, we wanna know it clearly. Do we know who we are? Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? See, we wanna know it clearly. Do we know who we are? Oh, so is life. Oh, so is life. Oh, so is life. Oh, so is life. Water make the river wash the mountain. Fire make the sunlight turn the world around. Heart is of the river, body is the mountain. Spirit is the sunlight, turn the world around. We are of the Spirit, truly of the Spirit. Only of the Spirit, turn the world around. Oh, so is life, body wise. So is life. Oh, so is life.
Seek for the spirit of life that is within you, that you may know more fully its power and strength. Seek for the spirit of life that surrounds you, that you might know more fully its connection to you. Seek for the spirit of life that is within others, that you might enter more fully into the community that embraces all of us this day and every day. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And y'all, I'm going off script. It's not good. No, it's fine. The connections that we have, the being here and now with you all are so important. And I just want to say thank you for carrying this and being a part of the people that we are building, the life that we are building, and the world, this living, brilliant earth and land, and our relationships with each other and with our earth. Our service has ended. Nope, our worship has ended, but our service begins.